So actually, I went back to try to play indoor soccer in New York and as well as basketball. But actually, 2 years later, after I had the AVM, I torn my right ACL. And after I torn my ACL, I think I was very familiar with the process of going to the hospital, going to surgery, and the recovery.
Mhm.
And I did it again. But after that, I was like, I'm done with after 2 years, you get those two big surgeries. You're like, I'm just done of hospital. So I just decided just not to play, where there's like contact sports, and maybe just decide to just take something more individual, like running, where even though you could definitely get injured, but at least
Mm.
there's a little bit less risk than there is in contact sports.
Was the ACL injured on the affected leg or the other leg?
The other leg,
Okay.
but I honestly, I personally, I strongly believe that it was probably from I think the stroke obviously had to do with it because probably just like a balancing thing where you try not to. This part is just not as strong, and it was just getting a rebound, and I'm sure that it just landed incorrectly because one side is weaker than the other one.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to Recovery After Stroke, a podcast full of answers, advice, and practical tools for stroke survivors to help you take back your life after a stroke and build a stronger future. I'm your host, three-time stroke survivor, Bill Gassiamis. After my life was turned upside down and I went from being an active farmer to being stuck in hospital, I knew if I wanted to get my life back to the life I loved before, my recovery was up to me. After years of researching and discovering, I learned how to heal my brain and rebuild a healthier and happier life than I ever dreamed possible. And now I've made it my mission to empower other stroke survivors like you to recover faster, achieve your goals, and take back the freedom you deserve. If you enjoy this episode and want more resource, accessible training, and hands-on support, check out my Recovery After Stroke membership community. Created especially for stroke survivors and caregivers, this is your clear pathway to transform your symptoms, reduce your anxiety, and navigate your journey to recovery with confidence. Head to recoveryafterstroke.com to find out more after this podcast. But for now, let's dive right into today's episode. This is episode 163, and my guest today is Juan Gonzales, who had an AVM rupture in his head at age 21. These days, 11 years post-stroke, Juan is training for an ultra marathon. Juan Gonzales, welcome to the podcast.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me here, Bill.
My pleasure, man. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Sure, absolutely. So actually, what happened to me is when I was around 21 years old, I actually ended up having an AVM, which, as you probably know, essentially in a usual day, essentially, basically arteries just they transport oxygen through the blood through sorry they transport oxygen through the blood from the heart to the brain, and then veins basically do the same in the opposite direction, so away from the brain back to the heart. But when you have an AVM, what happens is there's a tangle between these blood vessels, and that's exactly what happened. I had that in my brain, and a lot of people actually are born with this, and a lot of people go throughout the whole life without even knowing that they have this. It may not explode, or in my specific case, it did explode. And so in 2021, for whatever reason, unfortunately, in my case, it exploded. And when that's exploded, then it caused a stroke. And when that happened, then essentially I lost basically mobility on my left side. And then basically I had to go through the whole process of surgery. So they had to remove the AVM, got brain surgery, and then from there do all the whole recovery to try to gain the mobility back again.
Wow, man. One, it's 2021 now. We are in September of 2021 while we're recording this. So how many months ago was this, man?
So this was back in May of 2008. So it's been almost 11 years now.
And you were 21 years old at the time.
Correct. I was 21 years old at the time.
Okay. So you're 21. Where were you when it happened? Were you in public? Were you at home? Where did it happen?
Absolutely. So actually, I came to New York because I was actually going to start an internship in the city on Friday, and I remember it perfectly because it was a Wednesday when this happened, and it was the final of the Champions League, and Barcelona was playing against Manchester United. Being a big Real Madrid fan, I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this game, and hopefully Barcelona is gonna lose. So I remember perfectly. And then I started to watch the game. I was normally just sitting down, having some chips and guacamole. And when that happened, essentially, I started feeling this tingle sensation on your legs. When it gets numb, the pins and needle sensation. Which I think usually happens when you're, for whatever reason, I thought I was sitting incorrectly or was just in the same position for too long or something was going on. But then that sensation just started from the knee, from the legs, and it just kept going up and up. And even for the first time ever, actually went to the core, to my stomach, and I was like, well, that's interesting. That's never happened before. And that same sensation just kept going up and up again, and actually just went directly all the way to the brain. And so when that happened, I just felt very dizzy, like just I can only compare it to like sort of when you get very drunk and you're very, very dizzy. And that's what I felt. And I was like, whoa, I'm not even drinking, like something's definitely wrong. So I stood up and I was like, I need to lay down, because maybe if I lay down, maybe that's gonna help. But then as soon as I lay down, as soon as my left shoulder just touched the bed where I was, it just like, I think just the connections they just dropped. So it just became very heavy. The left side just became extremely heavy. And to be honest, that's never happened before. Obviously, I never heard of anything like that when I was 21 years old. So like, I just wasn't sure what it was. So I didn't took it that serious. I was like, oh, I don't know, not sure what to do. Let me try to lay down. Let me drink some Gatorade. Maybe that'll help. Then I call my brother, who also lives in the city at the time. And he was like, not sure what's going on, Juan. Like, let me finish up a meeting, and then I'll be right there as soon as I can. So I was still trying to figure out what it was, and then actually Barcelona scored a goal. So that was just like, oh, I don't even know what's going on here. Like, maybe I'll just take a nap. Which, as you know, it's like the worst thing you can do when you're in the middle of a stroke, right?
Yeah.
But my head actually hurt significant enough that I actually, even though I tried to go to sleep, I just couldn't do it because the headache seemed to be a little bit too strong. So I still wasn't sure what to do. I called my brother again, and then he was like, okay, I'm on my way. And so once he got to the apartment and he saw that I was on the couch, but like, I just, even if I tried, it was just too heavy. I just couldn't move my body. He was like, all right, let me call an ambulance and let's see what's actually going on. And so essentially call an ambulance. They took me on a stroller. And then once we're in the hospital, they were able to say kind of what was going on. So they had to act fast. So they were like, we need to basically get brain surgery in the next 48 hours or so.
Wow.
And so essentially we went to the operating room as fast as we can, remove that. And it's kind of what happened.
Wow, man.
In a nutshell.
That's pretty intense. When you were explaining it to me just now, you made it sound like that you had similar strange experiences in the past, but not the entire side of your body. Was that the first time you experienced that, or did you have signs before the big episode that there was something going wrong?
That's a great question. There wasn't anything like this before. I think I suffered just maybe a couple headaches, but I think it was very normal. But interestingly enough, I think that after the stroke happened, like I've never had any headache like that just on a random day.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't know if that could have been related to the fact that I did had it and that it was there lingering, but like just to a very short extent, and then for whatever reason that day just came out.
Did it happen in minutes, or did it take a long time, or did you have no idea of time? Did you have no concept of time?
So I think it just happened literally in seconds, right? So I think like that whole episode was like maybe 30 seconds. And then when I went to bed, lay down, that was maybe another 10 seconds from, from the chair to the bed. And so I think in a matter of minutes,
Wow.
the connection was gone.
You explained exactly what happened to me, but it took 7 days for me. So it was really,
How come?
the bleed must have been little and must have been bleeding a small amount. But by the time I noticed my entire left side was gone, it took 7 days, and I ignored it for 7 days. I went to work, I went to the gym, I drove my car, I did everything. And it was really strange because I was walking differently, but I was ignoring it. So you didn't have much time to act at all, but you had enough time to call your brother. How long did it take before he got there?
I think maybe 30, 45 minutes.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah. And before you know it, you're in hospital. So it wasn't that long. Within about an hour or so, it sounds like you were well on the way to being cared for properly. Did they take you straight into MRI or CT scan?
Absolutely, yeah. So the first thing they did is like, hey, even I think in the ambulance they kind of know what it was, but they just weren't allowed to tell you because they're not doctors, so they couldn't say to you right there, hey, you're having a stroke, you're losing, you're losing your brain. So they were like, we can't tell you about it. We just need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Then once in the hospital, the first thing was, hey, let's take this guy directly to an MRI and see what's going on there. Actually, maybe first was a CAT scan and then the MRI.
Yeah. Most of the time it's a CAT scan. The CAT scan is the quickest. Immediately it would have revealed a shadow on your brain. And then the next step would be, let's work out what's made that shadow. And then the next step would be surgery. So within 2 days, you're in surgery. So what about the rest of your family? How does it go? How did you have that conversation? Were you able to have that conversation?
I wasn't able to. I think my brother essentially took care of everything, but I just remember, like, once I was in the hospital, there was a lot of pain, and they just started giving me a lot of painkillers at the time. So I just remember that out of nowhere, the first day passed by really fast, and then I opened my eyes, and my parents were already there for support. And then so I guess my brother essentially did everything for me.
Wow, man. 21 years old, you're watching Barcelona and Manchester United. Barcelona scored a goal, so things are not good.
Yeah,
and then you have a bleed in the brain.
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I think that at the time I didn't even know what a stroke was, or what it actually, the implications of it. So like, I couldn't get a grasp on it. And yeah, I think, to be honest, like, I go to surgery. Then I wake up and my head is very, very warm. Obviously, the brain is absolutely,
inflamed.
It's inflamed, so it's going to take weeks, if not months, for it to calm down. But at the time, I didn't even know the implications again. So like, I'm like, okay, I woke up and I'm like, need to go to the bathroom. So I was like, all right, let me go to the bathroom. But then as soon as I go, I go straight to the end of the bed to try to go to the bathroom. The nurse that is, kind of watching me say, whoa, 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 where do you think you're going? You can't go to the bathroom. Like, why not? He's like, you can't walk. And so there, I was like, what do you mean I can't walk? Of course I can walk. But then when I send that signal to the feet to, hey, let's go, and it just didn't happen, that just feel like a very big shock in the brain, like just went through the whole soul, like, this thing is real. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen from now on. But I wasn't able to walk. And that's when it really hit me, like, wow.
Something serious has just happened. Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember the same thing, except the nurse thought that she was going to help me go to the bathroom, and she's half my size. She's a little petite lady. And she said, put your arm around me. And I stepped out and I put my arm around her, my left arm around her, and I stepped onto my left foot, but there was nothing, it wasn't working. So I was bang straight onto the ground, like hours after brain surgery, after I woke up from brain surgery. I screamed the place down. The nurse was horrified, and they picked me up and put me back into the bed. And yeah, it was absolutely horrific, and it was a nightmare. So I know exactly what you mean. That moment, just that moment when you realize, oh, stuff's just got real now. Like, what happens from now on? So many uncertainties. So
many.
How long before they took you into rehab?
I think it was, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks probably in the hospital. And then again, I think we started therapy as soon as we physically could. But I think that I was lucky enough because there was the ROSC Rehabilitation Center here in New York City. And so I think it's known very well for his recovery. So I started there, and it was very intense. It was basically like going to school from like almost like 9 a.m. all the way to like 4 or 5 p.m. of just different, either physical therapy or occupational therapy, both of those therapies. Luckily, I think the speech was affected, but not significant enough to have like specifically therapy about that. And then essentially the whole summer was basically just going through that therapy.
Yeah. Those times in therapy, I remember being alone a lot of the time and having a lot of time on my mind. Did you spend a lot of time alone, and what were your thoughts going on in your head? What was happening there?
Yeah, like absolutely. I think that it was just a lot of like how do we go from here, and just try to see like, and also I think that I became a more religious person as well, just trying to see like, how can we go from here, and just accepting it for what it could be, assuming the worst, but also at the same time trying to be very positive and seeing all the, like, fortunately enough, I think I was very young, so I could see the recovery. I could see it almost on an everyday basis. So it was very good to see the progress going on every day. But it's also very hard because I was also with a lot of patients that had strokes, but they're at different ages. They were not young stroke survivors. And it was very hard to see that because a lot of these people, they've been there for months and they did not have as much recovery as myself. So even though like I started from scratch to walk again, and for me, just walking the corridor was like a big deal. I did saw that, in a matter of months, but there's been people that just walking from the bed to the bathroom, and it's been like months or even years, and they still haven't been able to. So it's a lot of emotions that go with that.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ended up in hospital was in February of 2012. And because there was maybe a shortage of beds in the stroke ward, or they didn't know how to treat me or where to take me or something like that, I ended up in the ward where people were disabled from the neck down, where they had spinal injuries. And man, wow. I thought that was going to be me. I thought that was going to happen to me. I didn't realize what I was dealing with in my head. I had no idea. I didn't know exactly what was wrong with those people, but I was in the ward with them, and they were being fed by somebody, and the only thing that was moving for them was everything above their shoulders. And I'm like, far out. Like, is this me? Is that what's going to happen to me? So it was really challenging. And then they moved me to another ward where my only experience was with older people as well, who were struggling. And we were having discussions, because I was in there for 7 days. We're having discussions, but then one of the ladies kept getting asked, all the questions that they ask you, what day is it? Who is the Prime Minister in Australia, but in the United States, it might be who's the president. I always tried to forget who was the Prime Minister, because they don't interest me whatsoever. And they're asking this lady all these questions. What day is it? What's your name? And every day she's doing well. She's answering them. And then one day she doesn't answer them, and she doesn't know any answers to any of the questions. And within an hour of not answering the questions correctly, she was gone, and didn't pass away, but she was gone probably to surgery. And we never saw her, spoke to her again, or knew what happened to her. So we were thinking the worst. The people that were around me were thinking the worst, that perhaps something bad happened to this lady, which clearly it did, because they must have been checking her for ongoing blood clot or something like that, impacting her brain. So it wasn't fun to be in a general ward with people who were sick like me, but at different levels of sickness. And I was able to comprehend that it was going bad for them, or things were bad for them.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
And it makes you play it in your mind. It makes you think about the worst case scenario. And for a time,
Definitely.
most stroke survivors, I imagine, thought it was over, that, life's over. Did you have that thought of this could be it? My life could be over?
I thought about that actually before going to surgery, maybe a little bit, just because so many things come to mind. And even though, they did put me under the anesthesia, but there's still a couple of times where it's like, okay, like I'm gonna go under anesthesia. Is this it, right? So there was a couple minutes, absolutely, for sure. And when that happens, I think that I just saw basically your life just goes very fast through your mind.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I can relate to that. I think most people listening to this can also relate to it. So you come out of surgery, you're into rehab, and at some point you get sent home. What did you get sent home with? How much movement did you have back, and what were the deficits that you had?
I think I would say maybe like at that point after 3 months, maybe 75% was almost back. I think obviously the biggest deficits, it's just I think it was hard to tell, but again, I think and it still is, right? It's just that the hand, the one side is just stronger than the other one. But no, there was definitely deficits, because just doing any type of exercise or anything, like you can definitely tell that the left side was definitely weaker, 100%. But apart from that, I was also I continued, even though I went at home, and I had maybe another month before I actually decided that I wanted to go and try to finish school that same year that the stroke happened. So actually during that month, I kept the therapy with my parents, who I was very lucky that they were there to help me all the time. So we actually work a lot of that month as well, trying to just basically keep the same discipline that we did in the hospital. And I think that also helped, because, right before I went back for my last year to college, I was basically able to be almost like an 80, 85%, I think, of recover.
Yeah. And what was it like going back to college? Were you able to focus, do the work? Was there fatigue involved there? What was happening?
Absolutely. There was definitely a significant amount of fatigue. I think that I realized that, I definitely needed my 8 hours of sleep at the minimum. So essentially, during at least the beginning, the first 6 months when I was there, I think that I studied, and then just, try to go to bed early. And, if I had people coming over, or my roommate had people, he knew that, after what happened, around, 10, 11 p.m., I just had to absolutely shut down and get some sleep.
That would have been difficult. 21, legally allowed to drink in the USA, and no
Absolutely.
partying for you.
No partying.
Yeah, that's not the worst thing, is it? That you're going through.
You realize that it's not. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, who ended up winning the game?
Barcelona did, with that amazing header by Leo Messi. Was one of I think it was a 2-0 game.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't get the result that you wanted. I imagine that if you're such a fanatic of football, you're also probably somebody who was very active and played football. Would that be right?
I did, yes. I played football, and also actually I even though I follow a lot of football, I was actually born and raised in Colombia, South America, but I also played basketball when I was in high school as well.
Okay. So you were very active, probably very
Correct.
physically fit.
Absolutely, and and essentially that's where the running part starts coming into as well.
Yeah. Did you end up getting back to playing football? Have you given that a shot? Is that possible?
So actually, I went back to try to play indoor soccer in New York, and as well as basketball. But actually, 2 years later, after I had the AVM, I torn my right ACL. So, and after I torn my ACL, I think I was very familiar with the process of going to the hospital, going to surgery, and the recovery. And I did it again. But after that, I was like, I'm done with after 2 years, you get those two big surgeries. You're like, I'm just done of hospital. So I just decided just not to play, where there's like contact sports, and maybe just decide to just take something more individual, like running, where even though you could definitely get injured, but at least there's a little bit less risk than there is in contact sports.
Was the ACL injured on on the affected leg or the other leg?
The other leg.
Okay.
The other leg, but I honestly, I personally, I strongly believe that it was probably from I think the stroke obviously had to do with it, because probably just like a balancing thing where you try not to, this part is just not as strong, and it was just getting a rebound, and I'm sure that it just landed incorrectly because one side is weaker than the other one.
I can really relate to that. I know what you're saying. So basically, it's overcompensating on one side. Your form and your structure and your gait is not exactly as it should be, and therefore you're creating more wear and tear on one side of your body than the other one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was physically active. I went to the gym. I did all those things. I played soccer until I was about 20, until I was about 28, 29, but only for a few years. And at 37, when I had the stroke, I've tried to run around on the football field, kick the ball or whatever, but it feels really strange. It always feels like I'm out of balance, and it always feels like I'm going the wrong way. It kind of feels like I'm going always to the left, which is my weak side. And it doesn't feel nice to try and experience that. So I haven't gone back to any sports at all. And the only thing I do now is ride my bike. And I found an electric bike that makes it possible to pedal for you at the beginning. And because it pedals for you and it's assisted pedaling, it makes it so that my left side doesn't get tired, because until I found the electric bike, I was riding a regular bike, but my left side would get tired very, very quickly. And I would lose my balance. And often I would go to put my foot on the ground to rest, and I couldn't feel my leg, and I'd fall over on the bike. So I started to get nervous about it, and I stopped riding for about 2 years. And then I found an electric bike and started riding again. So that's the physical form of exercise that I do. But I only ride for about an hour or 2 hours per day. Very light riding, very gentle. And because it's electric assisted, there's no problem going up hills or anything like that. It's very nice and smooth the whole entire way. And I never could imagine doing the kind of running that you do, or somebody else who's decided to be a marathon runner does after stroke. I can't imagine ever doing that. What goes on in your mind after you've had the stroke to say, I'm going to start running now? What's all that about?
It's a lot of things, but I think that actually it definitely gives you, believe it or not, it's definitely a lot of motivation come from it, because just seeing that you could lose the ability to walk or to run, that is just, it's very powerful in your mind. And obviously, as you know, your mind is the most powerful muscle that we have, and that's just too much power right there. So like, it's just thinking about the fact that I could lose this again, and I don't want that. So I just want to enjoy that. So that just definitely makes me, that's enough motivation to get out there anytime during the day, regardless of the weather, and just take on these challenges. That's definitely a lot. And then I also think about it, a lot of people that they want to be able to do this, but unfortunately for them, they could have a similar episode like myself, but they're just not able to do it. And that also gives you a lot of motivation as well.
Yeah. So it's the fact that it was almost taken away from you forever. And because it hasn't been taken away and you can do it, you're not going to take it for granted anymore.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I do something similar, but on a very small scale. I always use the steps when I'm going to a building, up and down the steps instead of the escalator. And I only do that because once upon a time I couldn't do it. And now that I can do it, even though it's hard and very tiring and I have to hold on to the rail, I still use the steps because I can. That's the only reason why I do it.
I know that. Again, I think everyone, I think, takes a lot of things for granted. And one of the things is like, I really struggle a lot right after stroke was just putting a shirt on. Like, it's so hard to put a shirt on when you can't, when half of your body doesn't, you can't move it. It's extremely hard just to put a shirt on.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
feel very lucky when I actually do it in the mornings. It feels great just to be able to do that.
Yeah. What's it like with your friends? So you were 21. Your friends saw you go through this. How did they respond? How did your relationships change?
I mean, I think that they saw me go through this again. Like, I think I was, because a lot of my friends were actually in the different country, the ones that that I grew up with. They saw a little bit from the distance, but they were very supportive all the time, and I think that they understood the seriousness of it. So obviously, I think every time I go back there, they're very supportive of it, and they just adapt a little bit to my needs at the time.
Yeah. So these days you're called the Central Park Runner on Instagram. That's your Instagram handle.
Correct.
Tell me about how often do you run around Central Park?
Absolutely. So actually, I lived since I had the stroke in 2009, and I actually ended up getting the job that I was that I couldn't intern that summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to New York in 2010, and I've been since then in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And around 2000, that's so long ago. I would say like around 2016 or so. I actually started to run in the park because I live very close to the park, so I started to run a lot in the park. And then it just became like my training headquarters. So just try to run almost every other day in the park. And then a couple of my coworkers actually invited me. New York City has the New York Road Runners Association, which they do races in the park every other weekend as well. And so once I actually went to one of those races, the environment, everything was just, there's so much energy there, and that just felt perfectly for me. And after that, it was just like I just started to run even more and started to get into these competitive races as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically go to the park as much as I can, but at least 3 to 4 days. Now I discovered that you can also do it. There's also like other different routes in New York City, but the park will always be where I run the most, 100%.
I've been to Central Park in 2013, and it is an amazing place in the middle of a crazy concrete jungle. It's like immediately you're stepping into a different world. It's like so strange that it's so close to all that craziness, and it makes you feel like you're so far away from it. And we were in there in summer, and it was quite nice. No, we were there in winter, and it was quite cold, and there wasn't a lot of people around, but the sun was out, and it was so beautiful. I imagine it as a place that people go to sit quietly and to meditate. We went to Strawberry Fields where the John Lennon Memorial is, and it was so quiet there, and it was so peaceful, and it was like being in a meditation. Is that part of it for you? Do you get that sense from it as well?
What time did you go?
We went in the afternoon, and it was January the 1st or January the 2nd, something like that.
Okay. I mean, I wish it was like that peaceful all the time. I think when I go, I run in the mornings, and I run very early in the mornings. One of the reasons is because I want that peacefulness. But I also feel like the park, just like you mentioned, is just such an attraction. It's so beautiful. The park in the afternoons it's pretty busy in my opinion, with just a lot of people, especially in the summer. But I think in the winter, you could probably definitely get that feeling because it could get very cold. So I can definitely see, especially in that area of Strawberry Fields, like people are respectful of that specific area as well.
Yeah, it was probably, freezing. 0 was the temperature. So we were very, very rugged up. There wasn't a lot of people around. It was very sunny, but it was very cold. So we decided to go down there and check out Strawberry Fields, and it was just, I don't know, man, it was just a really bizarre and strange place and felt amazing. And I would have also loved to experience the park in summer and when it's busy, because that's a different kind of energy. Again, I imagine people go there for the same reason. They go there to get recharged by that place, or the trees, or the grass, or the lake, or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, like you mentioned, it's just the fact that it's just such a concrete jungle, and the fact that you can have this space, which is still pretty big, right? Because essentially, like one loop is basically 10K, which I think it's a lot, right? Just 10K without cars, just bicycles and just runners. I think that's a very decent amount of distance for you just run. So it's a pretty big park. I'll be surprised. Like I've been running there for almost 10 years. And I don't think I discovered a lot of the things that I have about it until maybe after running it for 4 or 5 years. I didn't know there was a castle inside. All this, there's different ponds, so there's not just one ice skating. There's also another one all the way in the back. The Harlem Hill, like there's like another like little area, picnic area that is all the way in Harlem Hill. Like you just it's a very vast space to be in the concrete jungle.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other people that you run with, who are some of the people that you've met there? Are they just normal, regular people? Have they got something special that's been going on in their life? What are they like? Tell me about some of the friendships that you've made there.
Usually speaking, I actually run by myself. The people that I run with are actually friends that I already know somehow. But and again, I think it's just more because of the convenience that, and a lot of these running clubs, you have to run at certain schedule, certain time, and I think that I just have my own kind of like schedule.
Yeah.
But I also think like after going through something like a stroke, I think that I rather I can definitely mentally speaking, I think that I could definitely like to be on my own when I run for the most part.
Okay. Are you somebody that prefers to have less contact with people, generally speaking? Do you just like to be on your own? Is that something that was like that before, or is it something new after the stroke?
No, that's actually quite the opposite. I feel like I like to be around people. I think that is the one thing that gives me energy. It's just being around people. Maybe not just, and even, I mean, one of the reasons why I love to doing like all these big races is because the environment of the people. But maybe just running itself, maybe I just prefer to do it by myself.
It sounds like a more spiritual thing then. It's interesting, what do you get out of it?
Maybe not. I think maybe I kind of just like to talk to myself when I'm running. So it's kind of like I'm running with someone else, but it's basically myself and just thinking basically.
Are you solving problems? Are you beating your goals? Are you pushing through pain? What are you doing?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it could be one of those races where I'm just thinking about planning for what's up for the weekend. Maybe it's something going out of work that I kind of want to like problem solving that I just want to just go over when I'm running. Maybe I can solve it better, think a little bit outside the box rather than when you're on your computer and just think about work. Maybe, and I'm just trying to think what else, and then just maybe just thinking about what's the next move, or what's the next vacation that I'm gonna do, or basically anything. It could be anything.
It's a good place to just go out and get some fitness, get some exercise, and also think and just escape.
Yeah, and I also think, like, I don't know, I mean, basically when you do this long runs, I think that you definitely get to this at some point. You get to discover a lot more about yourself, and actually even go all the way. When they're very long runs, I feel like you're just discovering more about your soul, and it gets a little bit more deeper than that. So definitely enjoy that as well.
Were you the kind of guy before stroke, before 21, were you the kind of guy that went to those places, the deep places, or are there things you didn't think about until after the stroke, until it was almost taken away from you?
Absolutely. I think that, I think again, before the stroke, I think that even though almost the same, but like, I just don't think that you just don't have that sense of what it actually is to be taking away from you, the fact that you can move, which again, like, it's just people just take it for granted, which, I mean, obviously everyone has that, but like, you just have no idea what it actually feels like. It's quite something.
How did your parents cope with all of the drama of your stroke when you were 21?
No, it was absolutely very hard on both of them. Definitely, I think that my mom absolutely was very hard on my mom. And I think it still is. I think that, once we start talking about stroke, she gets very sensitive about it. And obviously that also comes to my dad as well, and even to myself as well. It's just it was definitely something very hard to have when you're 21-year-old, to see your son going through that. To the point, like, I don't know, I know a lot of people, like, we just wanted to put it in the past and move forward. So there's not like a lot of videos or pictures about what happened. I think there was just more like, let's get over this and let's move on, and let's go back to let's try to go back how things were before.
Yeah, it sounds like some of those things have been achieved, but it sounds like it's still a big issue for people emotionally. It's caused trauma by the sound of it.
Absolutely, and I think I saw one of your episodes as well. But I feel like it definitely makes you more sensitive about it. About just, you can get very emotional very easily,
Yeah.
which was something that before stroke I don't think I was, but I could get emotionally very easy compared to before.
Yeah. And your brother, is he older or younger than you?
He's older than me, almost 4 years.
Yeah. And how is he these days? Is he okay with it? Did he struggle with it? What was the situation for him?
I think that we were lucky because he's usually, he's the older one, so he's the one that try to keeps the poise together, and I think he did a very good job. Because there was a lot to handle for him. Just out of nowhere, your small brother is going through all this, and then you see your parents who have to also suffer through all this. It's also very, very painful. So I'm just very grateful that he was in my life.
Yeah, he did a good job, of course. And he did the right thing. A lot of people, I know, at least with me, when I was telling people about the situation and how serious it was, I told them it wasn't that serious at all. And I wasn't making a point of getting people to help me out or to act for me or to do anything. So they didn't really know what was happening. They were hearing a story from me that was very different from what they were seeing. And it was confusing them because I wasn't giving them accurate information about what was actually going on. The doctors were, but then I was behaving like I was perfectly normal. And people were just so confused. They would come to see me and say, "What did the doctors say?" Well, I can't see that on the outside of you. Like, it doesn't seem like you're that bad. It shouldn't be that bad, right? But then after 3 years, when I had brain surgery, they finally realized that it was that bad. And I think it's when I realized that it was that bad, because I was in denial for a long time that there was anything wrong with me as well,
And why did it take like 3 years before you got that surgery?
Yeah, because I had one bleed, and then they wanted to wait to see if it would stop bleeding. Because it took such a long time to happen, they thought maybe the blood vessel will close over and it won't bleed again. But then 6 weeks after the first time, it happened again. And this time it was a pretty big episode. I didn't know who my wife was. I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't drive, go to work, type an email. I was gone. I didn't remember who came to visit me for quite a long time, for about nine or so months. But what they were doing was monitoring my situation. And every month I was having an MRI, and they would just check to see if it changed in size and if it got smaller or bigger. And the bleed was decreasing in size. The body was getting rid of it slowly out of my brain. So after about a year and a little bit, I was doing quite well. Everything was going back to normal. I started to go back to work, focus, drive, and I was really healthy. I stopped smoking and drinking and eating junk, and I became really lean, and I was so healthy. I was the healthiest I've ever been. And then about nearly 3 years after the first bleed, so the first bleed was in February 2012. The second one that was 6 weeks later, and the third one was in November 2014. It happened again, and after I had confused everybody by making them think that Bill's okay, everything's back to normal, we got had to ring them again and tell them I'm in the hospital again, and this time they're going to operate. They need to get this thing out of my head. So I was messing with people the whole time, making them think that everything's better. And then after surgery, of course, when people came to visit me and I couldn't walk, they realized that things were pretty serious. And
Yeah.
and I think that's the first time that I really thought it was serious. But I planned for the possibility that it might happen again. In my own mind, I thought if I can be as healthy as possible, if it happens again, my window of recovery will be shorter, hopefully. It's just an idea that I had and I just went with it. What can I do to support myself in my own recovery if it happens again? And I'll be the healthiest person I can be. So I'm not contributing to my disease. I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to fight it the other way. So that's what I did. And it's still, bled again, and it had to be removed. So I went through all the rehabilitation like you, and went through all similar problems. And then I think it took me about a year before I was feeling comfortable in myself again and able to get back to work properly and to do all the things that I wanted to do. And by about middle of 2015 is when I finally told all my doctors and all that, like, I don't want to see you guys anymore. Like, I'm over it. And
Okay.
I'm going to take over from here, and I'm going to put myself first, and I'll get better. But then, like you, I didn't have an ACL surgery, but I had a thyroid surgery, which was in 2016. So the middle of 2016, half of my thyroid gland was removed because it was enlarged. So now I've just got over all of this recovery, from the stroke, from the brain surgery, from all of that kind of thing. And now I'm in hospital again, another surgery. So I'm freaking my family out again. And I'm just confusing them and driving them nuts again. And at the same time, trying to keep them calm, okay, we'll get through this. We'll get over this as well. So it's such a long journey, man. And I'm not sure what they're thinking. Not many of my family members have been brave enough to have a conversation like this with me, like that's deep and meaningful about the whole situation. Like your family, they just want to put it behind them and move on.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with you on what you're like. It's painful to put them again through another surgery right after you have such a major surgery. It was just like, we've done this before. Like, it just felt like we've done this before. Don't worry, it's not. The other one was much worse, but yeah, it's not good. It's terrible to put them under again under that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully we don't do that for a long time to come, mate.
No, and also, like you said, I think that I'm basically trying to do that as well. Like, the whole point was like, I need to be strong also, like I have to. So like, I try, after the stroke, I needed to go to the gym no matter what every day, just to make sure that, that the left side keeps strong. Because if not, then, you never know what could happen again, right? So definitely try to do that. And then I think the running, obviously, it's very, like, I love it. And I think that also just helps in general to try to keep strong as well. But definitely it's like you said, it's about also became more conscious about what I eat, what I don't eat. As a matter of fact, like, I'm actually also, I wanted to get a nutrition certification, which I'm working on. I'm almost done with getting that. And I also became actually a running coach at the beginning of this year as well. So the idea is to be both a running coach and also a nutrition coach.
That's an awesome combination, because part of being fit and healthy is not just the fact that you're moving and doing a lot of running. It's also what you put into your mouth. Garbage in, garbage out. Good stuff in, good stuff out.
Absolutely. Exactly.
And I feel like a lot of the stuff that we've been educated about to think is good has come from, Coca-Cola or from Doritos or from the organizations that are selling those products and telling you that they are good. At least that was my education. That's what I thought was good for me. All the stuff that you buy in a packet off a shelf, I didn't realize that my diet was actually very unhealthy until I was about 37, when I had to stop and take a big look back and go, okay, what am I doing that's impacting me negatively? Could it be the food? And yeah, sure enough, it was. Coca-Cola, man, I used to drink, I'm not sure, like a quarter of a gallon a day, like a liter and a bit a day sometimes. And I just thought it was quite normal. And if I went to somebody's house and they didn't have Coca-Cola to offer me, I would tell them next time I come over, please have Coca-Cola. Don't have Pepsi. I don't like Pepsi.
That is funny. I think my great grandmother would always have Coca-Cola for us for whatever. I think it was just for whatever reason, and they just believed that that was, that was just the normal thing to do. But again, definitely, I think the media played a definitely contributed for a very long time about like what nutrition, what good means. But I mean, I'm happy that things are definitely changing in recent times. So
yeah, there's a lot more information available to people, isn't there? We can access amazing coaches and nutritionists on the Instagram, on Instagram, on the internet, on YouTube, and we could really learn from them about what the right way to go about our health and well-being is, the version that suits us at least. So I feel very blessed that we've I often say we've had a stroke at the right time on the planet. 50 years ago, it might not have been the same outcome for us.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think it could have been different. They may use a different technique. I think that for an AVM, I think that you had the option of either actually having brain surgery and taking it out, or you can also have the option of like probably the same as you, like just let it drink by itself little by little, like control way or something. And most likely maybe that was the way to go 50 years ago, instead of let's just do brain surgery and take it off and get it fixed once and for all.
Yeah, might have been a much bigger problem. So what are the plans going forward? Is there any big runs coming up, any big competitions?
Absolutely. So I think this fall, actually, like in a month already, comes the Chicago Marathon, which I'm gonna run. And then I'm also gonna run the New York City Marathon, which is in November. So I think it's the first time I'm gonna run two marathons that close. So I'm looking, I trained this whole year after becoming the coach, and I'm just trying to see. Hopefully, the training went really well, so that I'd be able to run competitively on both of those marathons, and the body can take it. And
So have you done a marathon before?
Sorry. I have done. I did the New York City Marathon in 2019, and I did the virtual marathon last year as well.
On a treadmill?
No, in Central Park, actually.
Okay, so you just run around Central Park 4 times?
Oh, almost 4. Yep, exactly.
Wow, man, that's crazy. I just think people who run marathons are crazy, but in a good way, like good crazy. So what is your fastest time so far? Or how quickly did you run it?
So I run it in 3 hours and 17 minutes as the fastest one.
3 hours and 17 minutes?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yes, it's pretty good time. And then the idea is to run there's 6 major marathons in the world. And so idea is to essentially be able to run those 6 major marathons, which are, you got New York, you got Chicago, you got London, you got Tokyo, you got Berlin, and you got Boston, which is like the most, is the most historic one, it's the most iconic one. But in order to go to Boston, you have to qualify under a certain time, and that time is 3 hours. So essentially, you have to work your way there to be able to qualify to Boston.
Aha. So not anybody can run the Boston Marathon. You have to be up there with the best.
You have to be up there with the best. Or I think charity, you can also pay if you raise charity as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking on the internet here, and it's got the really good times for people who run marathons. Less than 3 hours, only 4% of men are able to run a marathon under 3 hours, and 1% of women who compete. Now, under 3 hours and 5 minutes, it spikes to 18%.
Wow.
So 18% of men, 5% of women can run a marathon less than 3 hours and 5 minutes. So less than 4 hours, 43% of men and 21% of women. So you are only 7 minutes away from being less than 3 hours and 5 minutes, and you will join the top 22% of people who have run a marathon at that level, you will be the top 23%.
And that's the plan. And even better, like imagine something that I think to myself is like, how many of those had actually had a stroke?
Yeah, man, not many. I would say
Exactly.
not many. Yeah, when you put it that way, anything that
Yeah,
you run, that's amazing, right? Just from the beginning, it's amazing. But when you put it that way, it's even more amazing. It just goes to show how lucky you are, how blessed you are, you know, how you got away with it relatively lightly, although it's a traumatic experience and it's difficult and you had to overcome a lot. Man, it's such a good story. However many years down the track, to be having a conversation with a guy and he says to me, yeah, man, I'm running a marathon at 3 hours and 17 minutes and I had a stroke. Man, that's brilliant.
thank you. Yeah, again, very grateful that God, that whatever happened had to happen at that time, and just give me that perspective to where I am now.
Yeah. Has it changed your, I mean, as a 21-year-old, you probably haven't got much brains anyway. I know I didn't when I was 21. But did it grow you up at 21? Did you become grown up much quicker?
I I think a little bit, absolutely. I think that if it wasn't for that, then it will just take me a little bit more time to mature. But no, absolutely, it does. It absolutely does, right? You basically you were very close to losing everything. So it absolutely, even if you don't want to, it definitely grows you up 100%. Again,
Yeah.
like I think that, like I mentioned before, like I don't take anything for granted, but at the same time, I also, it makes you live different. You can just get a different perspective on life. And I don't focus, I try not to focus on, any type of problems, like unless they're like, like actually like big problems, which I think in that sense it's a little bit interesting because like a lot of problems that people have now, like I just don't think that they are problems because what we've been through is actually a real problem. So all these little things, like they just don't interest me. Like it's just like there's worse things in life. Like you cannot just be hold up on like very small details. Like there's actually other stuff that needs to be done. So it definitely just makes your perspective much more interesting compared to other people, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
I'm comparing myself to you at 21. I didn't have that kind of a brain. And of course, I was 21, but I became a dad at 21, a few months after my 21st birthday, like no 22. I was a dad at 22, so a year after my 21st, and I had a lot of problems. I mean, I'm a 22-year-old with a son and a mortgage and a wife that was at home. It wasn't working at the time, and everything was a problem. You can imagine, like I made everything in my head was a problem, and that behavior lasted until I was 37 and had a stroke. And I feel like you missed out on having those negative mindsets that some of us get caught up in for such a long time, and we don't realize that we're doing that. I didn't realize I was doing it until I was 37. I was complaining about everything before the stroke. And then a day later, I'm in hospital and this thing is serious and we don't know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, all those problems went away. I forgot that I even had them and there were no problems anymore. So I don't know why I was spending so much time focusing on them, but I did. I spent such a long time focusing on the wrong things instead of focusing on how to make myself feel better and achieve the things that I wanted to achieve and, let go of the troubles, the things that troubled me. I just focused on the troubles, right? So
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I like where you're at 21. Unfortunately, you had to go through some really difficult times, but coming out of that, amongst other things, you got this perspective that was able to stop you from wasting time putting energy into things that were not constructive and not helping you achieve, your outcomes. It's a really lovely thing to come out of something so dramatic and so terrible.
I agree 100%. Yeah, like I think you put it in a very right way. Like it just I just don't focus anymore on in the negative. Like you should just be grateful of a lot of things that you have, and whatever happens to you, it's about what it's more about how you react to it more than just take it, but just it's about how you act from here on, rather than start focusing on the negatives and what could go wrong. Just try to be positive always and focus on how to move forward.
Yeah. For me, it's about solving problems rather than focusing on the problem. It's about looking for solutions, spending all my time focusing on solutions instead of focusing on the problem, which, my God, it's such a waste of time. It's such a silly thing to do, but
It's a waste
all
of
been
time,
there.
and like life is just too short, and it can change in 2 seconds, right? So like that's also
Yeah.
where that perspective is coming to. Like
The Romans had a Latin term that they used to say. They used to say memento mori, and in Latin, memento mori means it's a reminder that you're going to die, that death is inevitable. And they create a symbol of this memory so that you can remember. And sometimes they wore it around their neck like on a chain, or some people putting it as tattoos. It's basically a skull. And the skull is just a reminder to that person that one day they're going to die. And I love the idea that such an ancient time, a long time ago, they just knew that death was going to happen to us. It was inevitable. And to remember that every time you come up against a problem that's not really a problem, just think about how time is short and how we can focus on the solution rather than the problem and move forward and beyond it, So I just came across that memento mori in a book only last week, and it has made such a difference to that part of me, that understanding of the fact that life's short. I always knew that since I was 37. I understand that now since the stroke. But this reminder that they had every day that they looked at so that they would never forget under any circumstances, difficult, challenging, losses or whatever there was, they always had this reminder that life's short. So, think about the possibility of the solution rather than sticking in the problem.
absolutely. What book was that?
It's right here. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, let's check it out.
It's called The Obstacle is the Way, The Ancient Art of Turning Adversity into Advantage. And it's by an American author, Ryan Holiday. And it is a very easy read, but he talks about the ancient Romans, the ancient Greeks, and he talks about a way of life called being Stoic, or the Stoics. And some people confuse it as a religion, but it's more about a way of life. And some of the emperors of the Roman Empire were Stoics, and they learnt in conjunction with a lot of the Greek philosophers. And it was about understanding that whatever is in your way, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is not meant to be what stops you from actually going forward. The obstacle is the thing that you're supposed to solve, overcome, and go through to get to the other side. So when you get to an obstacle, what they're saying to you is, it's the obstacle is the lesson. It's meant to be there. That's what's going to help you grow and become a better version of yourself and overcome whatever it is that's challenging you. And then you'll, with that lesson, you'll be able to take that lesson into the next obstacle and another one that might come up in the future that you never know is around the corner. So I just loved that idea. I mean, this has been such an impactful book, and I've read some very impactful books, but this one is one of the most. The obstacle is the way. When you get to it, you should be happy that you saw the obstacle, because now you know that after the obstacle is the answer, is the solution, and all you got to do is find a way through it. For me, it's just blown my mind.
I'm very interested. Yeah, I'm probably gonna read it. Looks very interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's a very easy read. It's very straightforward. I've highlighted all the bits that were important to me that I think make a difference to me, that I needed to learn or I needed to understand. And it's only about 180 pages, so it took me less than 4 weeks to read it. A few pages every day. And I think it's one of those books that I'm going to have to pick up and and look at again and read again, because the lessons are very profound, and they come from this ancient wisdom. They come from people who achieved great things in ancient times, that they must have been great, because still 2,000 years later, we're still talking about them. Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely. Very true. Very interesting. Yeah. I like all that stuff. When you talk about, ancient Rome and the Greeks, I think that's something that very interests me. So I'm totally going to read that book. Obstacle is the Way.
Obstacle is the Way. I'll have some links for people to check it out, some photos of that. Where's a great place for people to find you if they want to connect with you on Instagram? What is your Instagram page?
So it's Central Park Runner, and then that's the bottom line.
Underscore Central Park Runner underscore.
Underscore Central Park Runner underscore. Yeah, obviously Central Park Runner was already taken when I when I wanted that name. But yeah, that's absolutely, people can reach out. And then I think going forward, the idea is I do want to run like even longer races, so like an ultra marathon after I run the marathons, because I think that the more mental challenges you've been through, the longer you're able to support these long races. And I think that mentally speaking, that I should be able to run an ultra marathon. So that's definitely something that is exciting for the next couple of years. But also the idea is, as I become a coach, I obviously, the biggest thing that I eventually want to do is obviously focus on young stroke survivors that, that may probably have to some sort of similar event, just because obviously I can relate to them. And it's important that they know that just because you had a stroke, like there's definitely, you can still run, and you can still run if you really want to, and would love to help specifically that kind of people.
That's beautiful, man. I mean, what a perfect way to end the podcast. What a gift to give to the community as well. You're doing a great thing. You're getting fit. You're learning about your own challenges. You're overcoming your own mental blocks. And how long is an ultra marathon?
So technically speaking, it's anything that is beyond the 26.2, but essentially a lot of people, I think I'm going to go for 50 or 60K. It's the idea. There's one race in Central Park, actually, which I think it's around 50K. Yeah. Just 30 something miles.
Yeah. Wow, man. Well, I wish you all the best for that. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story. And I look forward to following you and learning more about you. And if anyone wants to connect with you, they can just reach out via Instagram. We'll have all the links on the podcast page there for anyone who wants to find it. Juan Gonzales, man, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you very much. It was absolutely my pleasure.
Thanks so much for joining me on today's Recovery After Stroke podcast. Do you ever wish there was one place to go for resources, advice, and support in your stroke recovery? Whether you've been navigating your journey for weeks, months, or years, I know firsthand how difficult it can be to get the answers you need. This road is both physically and mentally challenging, from reclaiming your independence to getting back to work, to rebuilding your confidence and more. Your symptoms don't follow a rule book, and as soon as you leave the hospital, you no longer have medical professionals on tap. I know for me, it felt as if I was teaching myself a new language from scratch with no native speaker in sight. If this sounds like you, I'm here to tell you that you're not alone, and there is a better way to navigate your recovery and build a fulfilling life that you love. I've created an inclusive, supportive, and accessible membership community called Recovery After Stroke. This all-in-one support and resource program is designed to help you take your health into your own hands. This is your guidebook through every step in your journey, from reducing fatigue to strengthening your brain health to overcoming anxiety and more. To find out more and to join the community for just $1, head to recoveryafterstroke.com. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamas. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.